Okay, today is May the 12th, 2010. We're at Carroll Lutheran Village interviewing Kaye Kolb. My name is Ann Horvath, and John Furshbeck is using the camera today. Mr. Kolb, where did you live as a child?
Well, I lived in Ridgeville, outside of Mount Airy, and you can call me Kaye. I'd be more comfortable with that.
Good.
And at that time, the house that I lived in was part of Ridgeville Nurseries. That area where the McDonald's is located in Ridgeville, all that area there was a nursery.
Okay.
And it went out towards Damascus, where the Cloverleaf is located. Probably part of it was in Fredrick County, and maybe some of it was in Howard County, who knows, because all that area ran together.
Right on the line there.
And on the other side of the road were dozens of greenhouses where that old water tank is located in Ridgeville. And up on the hill where the Southern States is located in Mount Airy was another portion of the nursery. And as you go to the intersection of Ridgeville and 144, to your left, I think it's a liquor store there now, that was a little building that was called the office. And the gentleman that owned the nursery, his name was Jess King, and his home is where the medical center is there in Ridgeville, right across from that new filling station that they bought. And I often wanted to ask the people there when they put that filling station in if they found a new softball there, because I remember I lost one there years ago. My father said, well, you lost it, and we're not going to get you another one.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it was lost forever, huh? So you went to school in Mount Airy?
Yes, that's correct.
What year did you graduate?
Graduated in 1952.
Okay. And you were born in
34 in Fredrick Hospital.
In Fredrick. What kind of work did your father do?
My father was in the nursery business. He was a landscape designer for Mr. King at Ridgeville Nurseries. And then later on in the 40s, he decided to branch out and to go into business for himself.
And where was this business located?
Well, his business was right in our home.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did he do some particular kind of landscaping?
Yeah, he did work for individual homes, like trimming and designing the landscaping of new homes. And he got in with the Meyerhoffs in Baltimore and designed and landscaped Ridgeville, Evanston Village in Baltimore, which happened to be the place to go in that era.
Yeah.
Also, at that time during the war years, I remember he used to do the planning for a lot of the homes in the Dundalk area that were built for the people who were working at Bethlehem Steel and Bendix and all the other plants, Glen L. Martin and all that in Baltimore.
So he made a pretty good living once he set out on his own.
Yes, he did. He never got too large with the business. He had about 4 or 5 men that worked for him and one truck. Dad's philosophy was, I want to be able to see everything that goes on each day. So that was his way of doing his business.
You had brothers and sisters?
Had one sister.
One sister. And then you remember the war?
Yes, I do. I remember the war vividly. Pearl Harbor Day, we were visiting some friends up in Union Bridge when that was announced, and you could have heard a pin drop at that time. And I remember the war years, the lights out thing, when we had the air raid tests, and my father was some kind of I don't know what you would call it. He had some kind of a hat, and he had to patrol. Yeah, had to patrol the area to make sure people didn't have lights on. And we had an old Stuart Warner radio, and we'd hold a hat or something over the radio dial so the dial light would not shine. And of course, I remember in school we would collect tin cans and paper and all that, and the rationing that went on. And it really curtailed your activities because you only had so much gas to burn. And the old rationing stamps. And I remember we used to go on short picnics. We'd get a group of friends from around the Mount Airy area, and we'd go out to Giles Park. They had something in the paper the other day, a little blotter about Giles Park. Well, I used to go out there and swing on the old tire swings, and they had picnic tables and that sort of thing.
Do you remember it being called Gypsy Hill?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Do you know the origin of that name?
Well, the only thing I can tell you about Gypsy Hill, its claim to fame is my wife was born in the old schoolhouse there in Gypsy Hill.
Oh,
but other than that, I have no recall. It was the home of the people out there by the name of Megans. They all lived in that area, and they grew worm seed.
Oh, yes. So. Yeah, interesting area. So you remember the rations and all the difficulty that came along with the war. Do you remember when the war ended?
Oh, yes. I remember fire trucks going through Mount Airy, and everybody very jubilant.
Because you were close enough to town to be...
Yes. I don't know, for some reason that night we were up near Wildwood Park when that was announced. Now, we didn't have a radio in the car, so we didn't know what all the commotion was about. And these fire trucks were going through Mount Airy, and I think my father and mother asked somebody what happened. They said, well, the war's over. So that's how we found out about that. Probably they had taken my sister to Dorothy Etzler's house for piano lessons. That's probably why we were in that area.
So she took piano lessons there. After school, did you go on to college, or did you...
Yes, after school, I did go to college for about a year and a half. I worked in a little grocery store through high school, and I went to Baltimore Junior College because they had a radio course down there that I wanted to take. And I had already gotten a job in radio at WFMD in Fredrick. I was 18 years old when I worked there. And in college, I took some of the courses, and I just figured I knew more than anybody else at that time. So I just quit college and worked full-time in radio. Probably the biggest mistake of my life, but that's what I did.
So did you always work in radio?
I worked in radio for about 30-some years.
Did you?
Yes.
And are you still working?
I still work, but not in radio.
Not in radio. Okay. And you're married?
Yes, married, and we have 2 sons.
2 sons.
And 4 grandchildren.
Okay. And your wife's maiden name was?
Snyder.
Snyder.
Yep.
Okay. And your mother was?
She was a Shipley.
A Shipley.
Yes.
Yeah. So that you had lots of relatives probably around Carroll County.
Yeah, we had, I don't think we're related to, well, I guess we are related to them, but I didn't know that group of Shipleys. Most of my grandfather's people were in Baltimore.
Okay.
And my grandfather, Shipley, had a little farm in Mount Olive or Gosnell, whatever you want to call it, and had about 40-some acres that he farmed with a horse and a mule. And before that, he had been not a conductor, but a motorman on the streetcar in Baltimore. And they moved up to Mount Olive because my grandmother's mother and father lived there. And I don't know the whole story how they got back and forth. I really don't. But I know my grandfather farmed for quite a number of years over there. And he grew worm seed and corn and wheat and that sort of thing.
Did you ever help on the farm?
Yes. I helped him with the worm seed and the fodder shocks in the fall. Yep.
How did they do the worm seed? I know this is a little tricky.
Well, we cut it off by hand. I remember that, and then we went around and with a pitchfork and loaded it in the wagon, and then he hauled it down to Barrett to the distillery down there.
Okay.
So
there was a distillery in Barrett.
Yes.
Very, very interesting. The Gosnells were in the area, though, for a long period of time.
Yeah, there's still a lot of Gosnells in that area.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
And so you did at least have some Gosnell cousins that were close by.
Yes, see, but both my parents were only children, so I didn't have any first cousins.
You currently live in Carroll County.
Yes, I live up near Uniontown.
All right. And so you pretty much lived in Carroll County your entire life?
Yes, I have, except when I was in the service.
And you were in the service
Yes.
what years?
I went in '57, and I was in the reserves.
Okay.
So that was a 6-month tour of duty. At that time, I had enlisted for 2 years, but for some reason they had to cut back, and they shifted a lot of us to this Army Reserve program back then. So then I served in the reserves in Mount Airy for the remainder of the stint, which was 6 years.
Oh, okay.
The reserve unit then was located where Wagner's
Yeah.
meat factory or meat plant is in Mount Airy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
And that was the original groceteria. You ever heard of that?
No, tell me a little bit
Well,
about
the
that.
groceteria was owned by the Rimbys and the Lintons in Mount Airy. And it was a grocery store.
Right.
And they called it the groceteria. And then after they outgrew their location where the locker plant is now, they moved into the back of the old movie theater near the
Okay.
Calvary Methodist Church in Mount Airy. And then after that, they built another store out in Ridgeville,
Okay.
where the Southern States is located.
So it was basically a grocery store.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Was it like a cooperative or?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that it was something like, well, that's probably good terminology, something like the old co-op used to be in Westminster.
Yeah.
That type of store.
Huh, interesting. I didn't. So, let's see, John, do you have some questions here on?
Growing up in Mount Airy, remember the canning company?
Oh,
You know, vaguely I remember that canning company. I know it was there, but that was about it.
Didn't have much to do with it.
No.
The other thing that's come up in a number of the interviews was German POWs that worked on Carroll County farms during the end of the war. Do you have any recollection of it?
Oh, I remember some that were out here below Balgers, between Westminster and New Windsor. They had a camp of them out there. But I don't remember any of them around Mount Airy.
how about your Cobb grandparents? Do you remember them?
Oh, yes, very, very well.
And
My
where did they live?
grandfather died before I was born. I think he died around 1924. But he had a store near the old bank building in downtown Mount Airy. There was a big mill there, right on the railroad tracks.
Okay, yes.
And but he had this store, and I think it burned down in one of the fires. And
There
then
were
he
multiple
sold
fires.
fertilizer or whatever
Okay.
from farm to farm, and he passed away doing that one day. Apparently had a heart attack or whatever and died. And my grandmother, Cobb, then had to go to work, and she worked at the sawn factory down in Prospect Road. There was a sawn factory down there, and she would work there. And she was an excellent cook. She could really cook a meal. I remember my later years in school, I used to walk down to eat lunch with her every day. And she really had some, I became pretty popular because a lot of kids came along with me and ate. And that was quite a treat each day.
So you could walk down there.
Yeah, she only lived about 5 houses down from the school.
okay. Yeah. So you could walk down there and get back to school
Right.
during the lunchtime.
And I remember the old ice house in Mount Airy. The Roops, Mr. Roop owned that, and his brother owned the grocery store in New Windsor.
Oh, yes.
Roop store. And then the iceman used to come around to my grandmother and put ice in the refrigerator. His name was Charlie Nicholson, because he always gave me a big piece of ice if I was there
Yes, I was
visiting
going
her.
to say
Yep,
they
yep,
would give kids ice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. What other things around Mount Airy that you kind of associate with your childhood that are gone now?
Well, I remember during the war the train activity in Ridgeville. Of course, you didn't have diesels; you had steam engines, and they made a lot of noise, but you slept through it because you learned to live with it.
Got used to it,
But
yeah.
we used to go down and watch the trains go through, and they would be hauling tanks and jeeps and troops and all that sort of thing. And there'd be one right after the other, and you could hear them grinding up the hill at plane number 4 to go through the tunnel, and then we'd see them come out on the other side. And we'd get down there almost every weekend to watch these trains. And, you used to look at the soldiers on there, and you wondered to yourself how many of them were ever going to come back.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
Yeah.
true. So there was a lot of train activity that we don't see anymore.
Yep, that's gone. And of course, I remember the commuter trains that used to come into Mount Airy
Okay.
and pick people up, take them to work in Baltimore,
Right.
and then bring them back in the evening.
Yeah, a lot of people worked in,
Yep.
in town,
Yes,
they would say.
yes.
In town.
And
Go in town.
and I remember the little town of Ridgeville. I remember the little garages that were located there. And of course, during the war, you couldn't get a new car. But after the war, Harry Hahn had a Pontiac dealership, and they didn't stock cars like they do now. They had maybe one or two, and you went in and ordered it and waited 6 weeks until they came in.
Yeah.
And then Jones Motors had the Dodge agency, and the Boer brothers had International Trucks in Ridgeville.
So I guess your mother got her groceries from the little grocery
Yeah, we went to Mount Airy, and at that time there wasn't a store in Ridgeville, but we went to the Browning store in Mount Airy and to Wagner's store in Mount Airy, which is the father of the fellows that own Wagner's meat processing plant.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And Bill Wagner was his name, and that's where we got our meat. And I can remember all of us kids in school had jobs in all these little stores, and we loved these jobs. We
Oh, yes.
used to deliver groceries. Now, after the war, Bob Browning opened the store in Ridgeville where I worked, and he had been about 18 or 19 when he left for the war, and I think Bob was in the Battle of the Bulge. I'm not 100% sure of that, but he had a close call. He brought his helmet home, which had a bullet hole in it that just went right through the helmet. And tell you the truth, working in that grocery store with him was the greatest fun I ever had in my life. He had a philosophy of life. You just don't take it too seriously, I guess, what he'd been through, a few years before. And we had this little store that had no running water, and it didn't have a bathroom, which would have driven the health department crazy nowadays.
Oh, yes.
But we had quite a business. And then on Saturdays, I would deliver groceries to people. He had a little, 47 or 48 Ford pickup truck. And people would call and order their groceries, and they'd say, well, we're not going to be home, but the back door is open, and bring the stuff inside. And, we would do that. And the money would be on the table, and you'd put the eggs and the milk in the refrigerator for them. Never thought of stealing anything, you were just proud to be able to do that for the people.
Really changed today.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll recall at that time the railroad was doing something to the tunnel, and they had a work crew down by plane number 4, and they got all their groceries from us. And I mean, it was a lot of
So
stuff
you were
they
busy,
bought.
yeah.
Because those fellas ate. And they would invite us down there to eat breakfast with them for 15 cents. And we really had a breakfast. And
And you got to be with all the guys and
yes,
hear all the stories.
yes, oh yes. Yep.
What about special events like at holidays and things?
Well, I can remember Christmas at my house in the Santa Claus days. My parents would put my sister and I to bed, and there'd be no sign of Christmas in the house, no tree, nothing. And then we would wake up on Christmas morning, there'd be a big tree and a garden with a train and all that. I don't know why they did it that way, but they must have worked all night long. And then we'd have Christmas dinner with my grandparents. My grandfather Shipley was not a particularly good driver. he had a 1928 Oldsmobile, and he would drive to the intersection in Ridgeville. And my father would have to go down and get the car and cross the intersection and bring it up to the house.
Getting up to
yeah. Of course, my grandmother Kolb, we went out and got her because she didn't drive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So.
Do you remember some snowstorms and sledding?
Oh, yes. I remember quite a few snowstorms. And, of course, this was before the road was built, 70 was built.
Right.
And there were some fields back there where we could slide. And we made quite a few trips up and down the hill. Remember one year in particular, we got a big snow, and it must have sleeted about 2 or 3 inches on top of that, and we had a crust. Oh, man, we could really slide. And, out there near the old house where I lived was a tobacco house.
Oh,
It
was
stood
it?
for many, many years. I guess they tore that down when they built the road. It was an old log cabin tobacco house.
Huh.
Because some of the farmers around there at one time must have grown tobacco.
Probably.
And, of course, I remember the blizzard of 42.
Right.
The Palm Sunday
Palm
snow.
Sunday.
Yeah. I had gotten a pair of black boots with red top that Christmas, and I remember my father picked me up and sit me down in the snow.
Did you have a favorite place for the summer, like as a favorite swimming hole?
Well, we didn't swim too much back then because of polio.
Yes.
And, of course, they called it infantile paralysis back
Right.
then. But we didn't do too much of that.
There was
Yeah.
a lot of concern about
Yes.
the contagion.
Yes, that's right.
Did you know kids with polio?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were very mindful of that.
Yeah. Your sister took piano lessons.
Yeah, my sister was very, very good at the piano. She went to Hood and to Peabody, and she played for several churches and for weddings and that sort of thing. And she got all that talent because the only way I could play a piano was on a record. So she did an excellent job.
I'll lose mic here.
I'll just hold it.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's
okay.
fine. Any other special memories of growing up in Mount Airy? A lot of changes there.
Well, you just didn't have anywhere near what the kids have today, but we didn't know any better.
No.
I really didn't have any close neighbors that had kids my age.
Right.
So, I had to use my own imagination.
Right.
And my parents wouldn't let me ride on the road, so I couldn't ride a bicycle to Mount Airy. So I rode down through the nursery. And during the war years, but they'd dig these big trees out of the nursery. We made out they were foxholes and played war down
Played
through
war.
there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so.
You had lots of friends at school.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That's basically where your social
That's right.
activities
Yeah.
revolved around. Were you involved in plays or sports or anything?
Yeah, I did some plays and stuff. I had 2 left feet and 2 left arms as far as the sports were concerned. As close as I got to that, I was the manager of the team. So, I mean, the water boy, in other words. Yeah. But that was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
yeah.
brought you into sports broadcasting?
Yeah, pretty much, I guess. I just, I like radio. And that was, when I was just a kid, I was so fascinated with radio. I just listened to it as much as I could. And, I just could not get enough of it. It was just
That was
something
the
that
big
devoured my
technology.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it did.
technology.
Favorite radio programs? There was a whole series that I can remember with the Gangbusters and Fibber McGee and Molly.
Well, I liked Jack Benny, and I liked Red Skelton, and Gracie Allen, and George Burns, and all those, Amos Brooks, the whole bunch. I remember when I worked at WFMD, I worked sort of at the tail end of that era. We had these programs on, and I'd sit up there on a Sunday night and listen to Jack Benny and whatever followed him, and I thought, man, I'm getting paid to sit here, listen to these radio shows. A whole $1 an hour was big money to me. But A lot of them we recorded and put it on an acetate disc, and we'd throw them back in our room. And once a month, some guy would come in and clean out the room. And I thought, man, if I'd have just had foresight enough to keep those records,
yes.
all those old soap operas and Arthur Godfrey and all that stuff were there, and no one thought to save them, you know.
That is true. Things like that get discarded easily. Huh. Well, you did primarily sports broadcasting?
No, I did everything. Sports was just kind of something that came along. And I wouldn't want to say I was very good at it. It was just something that we did. You know, when I worked here in Westminster, we did the Western Maryland football games, and we did Westminster High. And then as we had consolidation of the schools, we branched out and did all the schools on a rotating basis, so as not to favor one over the other. And I guess one of the greatest things that we had here in Carroll County for athletics was the old Carroll County tournament, basketball. Now, I don't know if a lot of people remember that or not.
Tell me a little bit. I don't remember that.
Well,
tell me a little about it.
Of course, in those days, we had Sykesville and Mount Airy and New Windsor, Union Bridge, and Taneytown. They were the high schools. And, of course, we all played each other in basketball during the season. But then at the end of the basketball season, they had a tournament at Gill Gym at Western Maryland College.
Oh, okay.
Just like a small version of the NCAA tournament. And every now and then, some team that had the Dickens beat out of them all year long would get hot and win a couple of games in there, you know, and really make it interesting.
Yeah.
And Gill Gym would just, well, it was just packed to the rafters. All these people came in, and all these great coaches that we had around Carroll County at the time. And it was certainly fun to be a part of that.
Right.
And then after they had the consolidation of the schools, they dropped it. So.
That's was an interesting time, I can imagine.
Yes.
Everybody going up to the college for a
right.
big event like that.
Yeah.
Everybody talking about that.
Yeah.
So,
We had, and then they added Robert Moton and I believe St. John's into that at one time. I believe they did.
probably did. Yeah. So that's John. Any other questions?
I think we've pretty much covered it. You mentioned the commuter trains going back and forth, and I know talking to people in the Woodbine area, they used to take the commuter trains up to Mount Airy to go to school. A lot of the Harrisons and the Picketts, came back and forth that way. I guess Donnie Haynes.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people use the trains to go to town to work and to shop. The ladies would go down to the center of Baltimore to shop, I think, during that period of time.
Yeah, they would go to Baltimore and get a streetcar somewhere and go right downtown.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. It was so popular.
With relatives in Baltimore, did you make many trips into Baltimore yourself as a kid?
We visited some. We had some people that we visited there. We had some family that was related to the Gosnells. They had a shore place down in Edgemere, and they were happy times. We went down there a lot during the war, and I can remember you'd see the large ships coming into Bethlehem Steel in that area down there, and that was about the extent of what you could do in those days. You just visit people because you couldn't do much traveling.
How about medical care? Who did your family use for family?
We used Dr. Grable in Mount Airy, and then when he retired or whatever, Dr. Caldwell. And the dentist, I went to Dr. Hopkins, and he had a very interesting office.
In what way?
Well, it looked like going back into Inner Sanctum or something, you know. It was kind of dark. And he had this picture on the wall. And from a distance, I don't know whether it was a beautiful girl you saw from the distance or when you got up close to it, it was the girl. But anyway, it was a skeleton. One way it was a beautiful girl, and another way it was a skeleton. And he had this this drill. It was like an old sewing machine. He ran it with his foot to fill your tooth.
Pedal.
Yeah. And you only ever filled one of my teeth. I never forget that. But anyway.
Wasn't a place you wanted to go back
No.
to too long.
And he drove, I believe it was a 1939 Oldsmobile, a little blue Oldsmobile. And somebody should have bought that when he passed away because that was brand new. That was a beautiful car. And he lived with his two sisters up on Main Street somewhere.
Growing up in that area, you're kind of in the middle of what one person told me was the Golden Triangle. You were right between Baltimore, Washington, and Fredrick, and I look at it going the other way and say Baltimore, Fredrick, and Westminster. Were you and your family more geared to one of those metropolitan areas than the other?
Yeah, we went to Baltimore a lot, and we went to Fredrick a lot. And, of course, we came to Westminster. Of course, at the time, my sister was taking piano lessons from someone over here at Western Maryland. And, of course, we'd come over every Friday night for that. And my father would take me out to an ice cream store out on Old Westminster Pike. It was Bollinger's Ice Cream. And that's, of course, long gone. Remember that. And, well, I guess we hit all the areas. Now, when we got into high school, we always ran around towards Damascus because the Mount Airy guys thought the Damascus girls were prettier than the ones in Mount Airy, so we had to go to Damascus.
Yeah. A little further from home.
Yes,
too.
That's right.
Didn't get in
That's
quite
right.
as much trouble.
Right.
All right. Well,
Well, one of the questions that you ask all the time, Ann, is you've seen many changes going on in Mount Airy and Carroll County.
Too many to mention.
Yeah, what are some of the
what is
better ones and some of the worst ones?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I guess my grandparents thought a lot of the things that we had back in the 40s were a whole lot worse than what they had. I don't know. I guess there's too much building, really.
more traffic?
It's kind of something that you shouldn't say because it's like, let me build my house and then don't build yours. Yeah. So, I know that the traffic and people are different. I sometimes go to Mount Airy and I'll stand in an area where it was close to where I grew up and just look at the people and I don't know one soul that goes by here. So.
You probably know more people where you live now
yes.
than people where you grew up.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, because now you're in a more rural area probably where you live.
Yes.
Than,
right. Our biggest neighbor is a big farm.
Yeah. So you probably sort of know the people
Yes,
around the
yes.
area. Yeah.
It's more like where I live, more like living in the 50s, really.
Yeah. Old Carroll.
Right.
Old Carroll County.
Old Carroll County. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there are those pockets of Old Carroll County
Yeah.
still around, but Mount Airy is one of the areas
Yeah,
that has changed a lot.
is. Yeah, it certainly has. Yeah.
'Cause I think-
And they've done a nice job with the Main Street. I mean, they're trying
Yeah.
to hold on to that. And I go for business to the Mount Airy Chamber meeting, and they try to keep things on an even keel.
maintain some of
Yes.
the special
Yes.
things. They do.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of the small towns
Yeah.
seem to be trying to keep those things
I think
that
the pendulum
identify them.
swings.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate
appreciate
it. I hope I haven't set this program back too many years. But,
I don't.